Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, October 7th, 2010. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, hops? Who needs them? We talked to Jesse Williams of New Albanian Brewing in Indiana about a series of Gruits-style beers that he's been working on. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Basic Brewing, all one word. On Facebook, I am at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james, and our show page is at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we appreciate your support greatly. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. And our Basic Brewing iPhone app is on the iTunes Store, and you can find us on the BlackBerry podcast directory, too. Let's start with an email regarding last week's show. I got a note from Michael Eads, who was one of the finalists for the Sam Adams Long Shot competition there in Denver. Michael was the one who had only been brewing for about 4 months. So, pretty good start. Michael says, I've been brewing for 4 months, and I believe my inexperience showed. In the interview, I talked to Michael, by the way, I made several erroneous statements that I would like to rectify. The first is when I said that I do partial mash brewing. I, of course, meant that I do extract brewing with specialty grains. Common. It's a very common, I don't want to say mistake, although I guess it is a misnomer. Michael says, I also made a comment about not having space for large batch sizes or kegs in my apartment, but I recently found out that there are multiple sizes of kegs other than the half-barrel one I'm familiar with. In particular, corny kegs are an attractive future upgrade for me at my 5-gallon batch sizes. Michael says, looks like I have a lot to learn. I will keep listening to the podcast and hopefully grow my knowledge of this wonderful hobby. Well, I hope you will keep listening to the podcast. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the note, Michael. No worries there. You never have to apologize here for not knowing something about brewing. You only have to apologize if you don't ask the question that you're not sure about. That's the only thing. I've received a few emails lately about steeping grains versus partial mashing, and it's a common misunderstanding. I guess misunderstanding is a better word than mistake. It's one that Steve and I are working to address, among other things, in our upcoming DVD, so stay tuned there. But for instance, I get a note from Gary in Vicksburg, Mississippi. He wrote about using Munich malt in an extract brew. Munich is a base malt, as opposed to a specialty grain, and it needs to be mashed rather than steeped. Gary says, other than soaking the grains in water at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, what's the difference between steeping and mashing? Couldn't I steep the Munich grains with my other specialty grains in my steeping bag at my mash temperature and achieve the same results? Well, basically, yeah. Steeping and mashing are both very similar in that you're letting the grains sit in hot water for a time. With steeping, you're just making a tea, essentially. With mashing, there's a process that's actually happening in there. You're using enzymes in the base malts to convert starches into sugar for the yeast to eat. If you wanted to use base malts along with your steeping grains, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind. First of all, mashing requires the grains to be milled rather than just cracked to get to the good stuff. For instance, with steeping grains, you can just use a rolling pin just to crack those grains and open them up a bit. But with mashing, you really need to mill those grains with a mill to take the husks away from the good bits inside and let the water get more access to those good bits inside the grain. Also, you may want to use a ratio of water to grain more like 2 quarts per pound of grain, or about 2 liters per half a kilogram. And that allows the enzymes to have a better access to the good stuff in the grain rather than just, say, steeping a bag of grain in 2.5 gallons of water or something like that. Also, you need to hit a temperature within the saccharification range for the enzymes. The saccharification enzymes convert those starches into sugars, and that is about 148 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 to 70 C. Now, most brewers rest for an hour at that temperature, even though most of the work, as we talked to Chris Colby recently, most of the work of those enzymes probably happens in the first few minutes. But you can check the progress of those enzymes by taking a sample of wort on a plate. Try not to get the grain bits in there. And don't use a paper plate because that's got starch in it. But take some wort on a ceramic plate and drop some iodine in it. And if the iodine changes to a dark blue or black, it's not ready. There's still starches in there. But if it stays brown, that kind of reddish iodine brown, you're good to go. Those starches have been converted into sugars, and you can progress with your brew day. Now, this is probably common sense, but don't drink that iodine solution or put it back in the brew pot. I always feel compelled to say that. But that's pretty much it. Steeping is more forgiving when you're making a tea out of specialty grains. You can put the grain bag in there, and as your water is turning from cold water into hot water, as long as you take the grains out before it hits 170 degrees Fahrenheit, then you're good to go. It's just simply making a tea out of that big grain tea bag. Mashing takes a bit more attention to the details that I just talked about. But, Gary, essentially you're right. Mashing is steeping, only with more activity going on inside. Also, when you're mashing, you might want to think about using a bigger grain bag, to give the water more access to the grains in the middle of that otherwise ball of grain. Easy, though. I got a note a while back from Harper Abbott, who said, I've been laid off as an aircraft engineer twice in a year and have decided to start my own venture. I'll soon be launching a homebrew-focused web store producing customized caps, openers, bottles, etc. I was intrigued, so I sent Harper line art of our Basic Brewing logo, and he sent me back an assortment of laser-engraved bottle caps of various colors and a wall-mounted bottle opener with our logo right on there. And I have to tell you that he did a good job. The logo looks really good on a bottle cap, and I was very impressed with his work. And I'm going to have to dedicate a special beer for those caps. They'd be excellent for a special occasion of some sort. And so I told Harper that I'd pass along his URL. It is wildhopsprintshop.com. That's wildhopsprintshop.com. Check him out. He does good work. At least the stuff that he sent me looks good. So check him out. And good luck on the new business. And I hope that you won't be laid off from that. What a bummer to be laid off twice in a year. So good luck. Now let's move on. Beer podcasting has a few established entities that have been around since the beginning. And one of my favorites is The Good Beer Show with Jeffrey T. and his buddies. Well, Jeffrey T. has been busy re-educating himself for a career change lately. Speaking of career changes, so The Good Beer Show has been on sort of a hiatus. But it's kind of ironic because I thought you're supposed to drink more when you're going to college, right? Well, anyway, the other day I was happy to see a new episode of The Good Beer Show pop up in my iTunes. And the show was recorded at New Albanian Brewing Company. And they talked about a series of hopless beers being brewed there. And it intrigued me. I looked on their website, and it looked really interesting. So to find out more about these Gruit-like beers, I called up Jesse Williams, who is a brewer at New Albanian. Well, Jesse Williams, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you guys, give me some background, first of all, on the New Albanian Brewing Company.
New Albanian Brewing Company was a name that was taken by what is now the New Albanian Pizzeria and Pub. They were Sports Time and Richo's. And Richo's in New Albany has consistently been one of the best beer bars in the country for going on 15 years now. So the New Albanian Brewing Company was taken as a name for the company a long time before we started brewing. We started brewing in 2002 at our Grant Line Road location on a 4x8 system, and it was kind of just an experimental brewery with all the fantastic beer on tap at Richo's all the time. It left us open to not do things like a wheat and a pale ale and those things. So we made crazy beer, and it's still, that location is still an experimental brewery only.
So that as a brewer, that's got to be exciting for you.
Oh yeah, it was. Basically complete freedom to make whatever we want to do, whatever we want to make.
So what's a team like? Are you a member of a team of brewers there?
Yes, David Pierce is the director of brewing operations. David Pierce has brewed in the Louisville area going on 18 years now. I took over the brewery at Grant Line from Michael Borchers, and that was going on 6 years ago. Jared Williamson, who now runs the Grant Line Brewery, he came on with me there about 5 years ago. So now I'm downtown at our location with Dave, and Jared's taken over the Grant Line Brewery.
So what's your background in brewing? Did you start out home brewing?
No, I'm actually a chef.
Ah!
So that's where some of the odder culinary aspects to our beer that's helped me a lot do that. And brewing was a learned thing for me, so I learned on the job.
Wow. So coming in from the culinary world instead of the beer side, I guess you would consider that in the setup that you're at, where you're brewing kind of non-traditional beers, that's got to be an asset because you're not kind of encumbered by traditional brewing knowledge and recipes?
No, it was absolutely perfect way for me to get my feet wet. Just not having to follow any rules at all was definitely a good way to learn. I mean, just as in homebrewing, there's no reason to follow the rules if you don't want to.
I like that. So how did you kind of get into brewing, or how did you sort of shift gears mentally from cooking into brewing?
Well, I'd been a fine dining chef in Louisville for about 5 years, and I was burned out, and I decided to get out of the kitchen for a little while. I'd saved up some money and took a job with Sports Time Pizza, just waiting some tables and hanging out. And the brewer was leaving. I'd spent about 3 months with him in the brewery and took the keys. So that was about it.
Took the keys and quickly drove off the road.
Yes, sir.
So the reason I'm calling is I've had requests from listeners in the past to do a show or a series of shows on Gruits, brewing without hops. And I was listening to the Good Beer Show and heard you guys talking about this series of beers where you're brewing without hops, and that sounds right up the alley there.
Absolutely.
How many beers are in this series, and how did they come about?
There are 3 actually in the Gruit Ale series. We've done, I believe it's 5 beers total with that have been no hop beers that we've sold over the counter and done quite well with. The 3 beers in the Gruit Ale series are Artemisia, which is a mugwort and chamomile ale, and then there's like a Braggot, that's Strasspfeffer, it's just heather and honey. And then Juniper is juniper rye, kind of a take on the really, really old Scandinavian recipe.
Wow. I want to get into each of those beers individually, but first of all, how did you do your research to going into brewing hopless beers? Where did you find your information?
Well, the usual nowadays, mostly on the internet. We do have a brew club that meets at our Richo's location, and it's Fossils. And Fossils has a pretty extensive library of really, really old brewing books. So they were fantastic good enough to let me delve into those and get into some really, really old ones. So it was pretty fun. I don't have the names of the books on me at
Yeah.
the time. I'm not prepared, sir. Pardon me.
Now, hops do several things for the beer. Among those are bitterness, of course, and preservation of the beer. So are these ingredients that you substituted for hops, do they act equally as well in both the preservation and the bittering aspects?
Well, bittering not as much. What you're looking for in the preservation with hops is the astringency or the acid that you're getting out of the hops to preserve the beer. So you're going to have something that has at least a little bit of astringency. But no, I mean, some of these beers are meant to be very quickly consumed and not sit on a shelf. Not aging beers, really.
So on some of these beers, have you found that they sour over time or that they change drastically in flavor over time?
No, I picked the ingredients that I picked so they would preserve the beers. But I mean, you can get into some of the. If you start getting a little, like if you put, for instance, if you make a saison and just use dandelions as your flavor component, then that beer is not going to last as long as a saison normally would.
Right.
But I mean, use something like mugwort and chamomile. Mugwort is plenty astringent enough that beer will, a year later, it'll be almost exactly the same.
So how did you settle on these recipes? Did you do smaller kind of pilot batches first?
Well, in the brewery that we're talking about, when we started these, it's a small system anyway. It's basically a glorified homebrew system. It's just a really big version of it. It's 4 barrels by 8, and so it's not an astronomical amount of beer. And we were confident enough that we went ahead and made 2-barrel batches to start. So, and that's our pilot size, if you want to say.
And well, let's just start talking about these beers. Is it Artisma or Artismia?
Artemisia. Yes, sir.
I need better glasses. Artemisia. Now, this is the one with mugwort.
Mugwort and chamomile, yes.
Now, where do you find mugwort? Did you have to go down to a Diagon Alley, or?
Mugwort is generally available through any herb cellar. Any brewery herb cellar will have mugwort. I like Star West Botanicals. They keep stock of an amazing variety of things.
And what character does mugwort bring to the beer?
Mugwort is a very earthy, slightly sweet. I don't know. People get a lot of different things out of it. Tobacco, mushroom, licorice. I mean, there's a lot of strange flavors that you don't normally associate with beer, but at the same time, and you balance that with some chamomile, which has that orange, flowery kind of flavor, and it's a love 'em or hate 'em beer. I mean, it's you either really, really like it or you don't at all.
On your website, it says mugwort is regarded as useful in repelling moths. So
yes, it is. It's also considered slightly psychotropic and it's supposed to be a dream intensifier. So,
have you found this the case?
I have not personally. I have heard some interesting stories, though. So,
so how much mugwort do you use in a batch of beer? I mean, I know that there are homebrewers out there that are probably taking notes and trying to scale this down to, say, a 5-gallon batch. But how much mugwort would you use?
Well, that's pretty subjective. We use about, about 4.5 pounds total throughout the batch. But that gets put in at a couple of different times. That goes in, a little bit goes into the boil, and a little bit goes into hot back, and a little bit goes into dry, a little bit goes in dry for aging. So it's really subjective. It is a strong flavor, and if I would definitely want to pilot a batch first before I try to put too much in.
So is it similar to hops in that you get sort of more utilization? You know, in hops, the longer you boil up to a certain point, you get more bitterness out of those hops. Do you get more different characteristics?
Absolutely. Cooking the mugwort definitely brings out if it goes too long in the boil, it'll start to have a vegetal kind of flavor, and you don't want that, really. So it's got to be quick and clean.
Wow. So what character do you get out of, say, boiling the mugwort as opposed to dry mugworting beer?
Sure. Mugwort dry again has more of it has a sweeter flavor than, and I mean, this isn't something that's actually sweet. It wouldn't take me as sugary. It's a sweeter, cleaner flavor, cold, and cooking it brings out the intensity of the herb, but doesn't stay as clean, as tasting as it could. So it has to be basically dunked in there, tea bag style.
Now, chamomile is a more traditional ingredient.
Yes.
How did you handle using that?
The same way. It just got mixed in with the mugwort and just dunked in as a large tea bag and squeezed out. I mean, it goes in for, I'd say they stay in for no more than 30 minutes.
And talk about the malt base that you've got going on with this beer as well.
Malt base is all Simpson's Golden Promise with that one, and it's just a traditional brown ale recipe, really.
Wow. That does sound tasty. Are these still available, these beers?
On right now is the one that we're speaking of. Artemisia is on right now at Bank Street Brew House.
Excellent. And then the Genever? Did I get that one right?
Yeah, Genever is a takeoff of where they would, instead of using false bottoms of the mash tun, you would line your mash tun with juniper branches. And that would create your false bottom.
And so do you? So you put that in the mash tun. Do you?
We use juniper berries, blue juniper berries from Star West Botanicals, and they mortar and pestle, crush, and then toast the juniper berries up a little bit, and they go into the mash, and that's basically it.
Wow.
And that is that one's just a kind of a slightly rye wit recipe. It's just an ale recipe that's just done as rye wit.
So once again, describe the process. There was a little dropout in there. So describe that beer from the mash tun to the boil and into the fermenter.
The mash tun is just the grain bill for the recipe is basically a rye wit, just a rye wit recipe, and it goes in with about 2 pounds of crushed and toasted blue juniper berries, and 90 minutes later it boils and nothing gets added to it, and it goes to the fermenter and gets pitched with ale yeast, and it's done.
Wow.
So there's no other juniper aging on that one most of the time.
What kind of character do you get from that?
I mean, resiny, piney. I mean, exactly what you would expect.
Now, you're going to have to help me with the pronunciation of the third one. I'm not even going to try.
It's Strathpfeffer.
Strathpfeffer.
Strathpfeffer. It references a rock, and it references an eagle-shaped rock in Scotland, I believe. But that's what our artist did that one. So that's what it references, and it's almost a braggot. It's about 25% of the fermentables come from honey. And we get local forest honey here, and plenty of bee legs and butts in that, unfiltered, fantastic honey, and 25%, and that's just that's again just a very, very mild ale recipe, and just honey and heather gets the same treatment as the mugwort. It just gets basically giant tea bag in the boil for about 40 minutes.
Wow. So would it be, you say these are sort of lighter gravity beers or kind of mild recipes?
For us, they are. We're a kind of a big beer company, and these recipes run right around 5, so they right around 5% by volume, and that's on the lighter side for us for sure.
And talk about your other 2 beers that you've brewed without hops.
Well, the very first recipe that we did when I took over the brewery was a Saison with dandelions that I referenced earlier, and that one it was a trial. It was to give it a shot, and it was about 7% just with dandelion heads as the additive, and it was very interesting, very floral. Dandelion heads have a little bit of that dandelion green flavor, that kind of crispy, spicy green flavor, and that came through as well as the dandelion, the floral of the dandelion itself.
Now, were these commercially available dandelions, or did you have to go out and pick them yourself?
They were commercially available dandelions, yeah.
Ah, that's cheating. You should...
Well, I didn't have time to dry them myself as well. So. It would be very interesting. It would be very interesting to do for a home brewer to make a very small batch and just use, picked dandelion heads, cleaned and picked dandelion heads. That'd be very interesting. I've never tried that one.
Now, I've actually had a home brewed dandelion wine that someone sent me, and those were handpicked, and it was really tasty.
Dandelions have a very interesting flavor. If nobody listening has had something made from dandelion, it is a unique flavor. So,
and it serves two purposes. You get a nice beer or a nice beverage out of it, and also you get to cut down on next year's dandelion crop in your front yard if you pick them yourself. So, and you have a fifth hopless beer.
That's what is it? I don't know. It's been about 5 years. I'm not even sure if I can recall what that one is. I don't know. We might have to just edit that. I can't remember what it is. I was trying to think of it.
So, you were talking earlier about the dandelion saison, and maybe you wouldn't want to leave any hanging around for very long.
No, not too long, probably.
Did you drink all of that, or serve all of that quickly, or did you experience any?
We drank and served that very quickly, and it went fast. I can't say that I know for sure that it would go bad, but sitting at dandelion itself isn't going to be a big preservative. If you're going to do something, want it to sit, you'd have to make the alcohol pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure that it didn't do anything too crazy.
So what other beers do you have on the horizon that are kind of off the wall and non-traditional?
Let's see. Well, Cloven Foot comes out pretty soon. That's going to be a giant Belgian black, extremely black Belgian, which is not something that the Belgians usually do. But it's not quite a stout, but just a black beer, which should be a very interesting one. On right now is Blackgrass Saison, which is more traditional ingredients in that Saison. It's lots of black pepper and lemongrass, and that came through. That turned out excellent. Thunderfoot, one of our giant imperial stout, comes out about a month and a half. That's about a 12.5% imperial stout that gets aged for a year on oak and dried cherries.
Wow!
So that's a big one right there.
Yeah. So you've got to find room in your brewery to keep that beer for a year.
Oh yeah, I have a 4-pallet stack up to the roof in the in the walk-in now. Moving down here, we got to get a giant walk-in, so I have room to store some things now. It's nice.
Wow. So what advice would you give homebrewers on kind of stepping off the traditional path and trying new and interesting ingredients?
That it might not seem traditional, and it might not be in what you normally think of as beer. There is nothing you could think of to put in a beer that someone historically hasn't done already. There are absolutely, no rules to follow. If you want to get outside of the box of making lagers and mild ales and brown ales, there's a lot of information out there for the home brewer to look at, and there's a million beer recipes. You can definitely easily find one that'll pique your interest. I'm still waiting for someone to make Old Cock Ale, so it's a good one. Still waiting for that one. Haven't seen that one yet.
I'm not sure if I want to ask any more about that one.
Yeah, it's super. The very, very, very old recipe. It's a strong English ale with a still feathered chicken. The chicken gets scalded, but right before you pluck it, so it gets scalded and eviscerated, and then gets dropped into a barley wine or strong ale style barrel and sealed in. And it ages with the chicken. I don't know. That's just something I ran across doing research for old beer styles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now with real cock.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's I'll try anything once, but knowing ahead of time there's a rotten chicken in the beer, I think I might shy away from that one. It's interesting. We go to the Homebrew Conference every year, and we go to the Great American Beer Festival now every other year, and
Sure.
the homebrewers are really experimental. I mean, we have had Jamaican jerk beer and jalapeno beers, and we had a curry beer at this last one. And my friend Andy and I were walking around the Great American Beer Festival floor looking for unusual off-the-wall beers, and it's not until I was actually looking for kind of off-the-wall beers that I realized that most professional breweries, probably out of necessity, are brewing beers that are the traditional styles.
Absolutely.
And they're kind of shackled by the fact that they've got to sell lots of this beer and appeal to the lowest common denominator of craft beer lovers.
Yeah.
So again, you are in an awesome position in that you have this freedom to go out and explore.
Yeah, the company has been spectacular. The owners of the company have been more than generous with letting the brew team do what we want to most of the time. I mean, it is. Don't get me wrong. It's a business, and we have to make money. But at the same time, I mean, doing small, special things that get us excited as brewers to do, and it keeps it fresh. So, they've been fantastic.
As a chef, looking at the beer world, do you think that there's a danger of putting too many ingredients in the stew, so to speak? I mean, can you muddy up a beer by throwing too many different ingredients?
You certainly could. It could be. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of home brewers listening that have tried to blend too many different kinds of hops into a beer, and it turns out not what you expected at all. You get start to get a little oniony or something like that. Those vegetal flavors start to come out when you start mixing too many together, and it's a delicate balance at all times. So.
Well, excellent. Well, I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate your taking time out to talk to us. And it was good to hear. Well, first of all, it's just good to hear the Good to Beer show back on, and
yeah, those guys were funny,
and good to hear you guys being talked about, and a brewery that I was wanting to talk to and stepping out of the bounds, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So, Jesse,
thank you very much.
Good luck.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, cheers. Well, thanks again to Jesse Williams. It sounds like a lot of fun, brewing relatively small batches of beers with experimental ingredients and getting paid to do so. With Halloween just around the corner, I think a mugwort beer sounds just perfect. So I'm going to have to look around and see what I can find. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can check out our homebrewing DVDs, Introduction to Extract Homebrewing, Stepping into All-Grain, Low-Tech Lagering, Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can check out our shirts in our online store, too. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Ion IED07 Drum Rocker Premium Drum Set for GarageBand, and Klipsch Image S4i Premium Noise Isolating Headset with 3-button Apple Control. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we deeply appreciate your support. Don't forget there are also associate links for the American Homebrewers Association and Brew Your Own magazine on our site, too. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by our buddy Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.